Chapter 1. Anthropoids and Humans. It all started a few million years ago when our distant anthropoid cousins became hunters. Toward the end of the Pliocene epoch and the beginning of the Pleistocene, a gradual reduction in rainfall began to deforest parts of Africa south of what is now the Sahara Desert. Rainforests changed into grassland savannas. While the ancestors of present-day gorillas, baboons, gibbons, and chimpanzees retreated with the forest and clung to its shelter, other anthropoids were compelled to face the challenge of the grassland's open spaces with their dangers and terrors. Presumably, they were pushed out of the dwindling groves by the stronger forerunners of the great apes. From food gatherers, ground anthropoids became hunters due to this ecological change. Inevitably, their diet also changed. Around the Middle Pleistocene, man-like apes evolved into ape-like men by becoming omnivorous. This change implied a remarkable increase in their capacity for survival in all environments. Herbivores gather food exclusively for themselves, while most carnivores tend to share food. Carnivores do not consume their game on the spot, but bring it back to be shared among the other members of the group. Since hunting could not be carried out by all members, food procurement became a specialized task left to the strongest and cleverest young males. This specialization implied group cooperation and sharing the fruits of the hunt with females and infants. Food sharing became the outstanding functional criterion of man, the trademark of the human condition among primates. One of the main byproducts of this revolution was that the search for food became the primary preoccupation in this new way of life, relegating sex and the choice of mates to a secondary role. The sexual impulse had to be brought under control to serve a socially useful purpose, the protection and strengthening of the family and tribal group. This was achieved by a strictly prescribed code of behavior or by a behavior pattern imposed by the new living circumstances. But when the Australopithecines, the bipedal ape-like men of Southeast Africa, extended hunting to medium and larger size animals such as antelopes, wild pigs, hyenas, and buffaloes, other evolutionary changes took place. While physical strength and agility were still important, an even higher premium was put on the development of intelligence and the ability to solve problems. Learning and intelligence began to take over from the vanishing animal instincts. This evolving male primate began to emerge and stand slightly apart from nature as a thoughtful, problem-solving, tool-making, immensely adaptive protohuman capable of abstract thinking. Big game hunting became the decisive organizing activity that shaped all the traits that characterize our species to this day. It was not only a new food procurement technique, but a new way of life that generated a new species. Man has been a hunter for 99% of mankind's lifespan. More than anything else, hunting required not only the aggressiveness of a predator, but also cooperation between the male hunters during the hunting season. The early weapon-wielding ape-like men were pack hunters, much like wolves. Unlike wolves, however, they were equipped with powerful brains and were able to devise elaborate methods of cooperation and group communications. Moving toward bigger and more dangerous game and increasingly lengthy hunting expeditions, they gradually gave up their nomadic ways and began to build semi-permanent home bases for females and offspring, along with storage facilities for the food brought back from the hunt. The most important consequence of the new big game hunting way of life in the open savannas was to trigger an asymmetric evolution in the activities and social standing of the sexes. While herbivorous male primates need not provide food for females because food gathering is easy for both, hunting anthropoids had to provide for females and offspring in their new way of life. Menstruation, pregnancy, and the care of children were not compatible with the hunt, which thus became an exclusively male occupation. This left females in charge of food gathering whenever possible and convenient. As a result of this new division of labor between the sexes, the cooperative instinct of the hunting males developed rapidly, giving protohumans an inestimable advantage over other non-cooperating animals. The new way of life had another consequence, the development of pair bonding, a rare occurrence among primates. The long expeditions required by the hunt made it imperative that sexual rivalry between males be reduced to the minimum. Hence, the allotment of one female for one male on a semi-permanent basis. In turn, this pair bonding allowed for a great increase in hunting cooperation, which can be termed male bonding. The weaker males could no longer be frustrated by the stronger ones as among other primates. Successful hunting required the cooperation of all males, all of whom had to be sexually satisfied. Perhaps the most important result of pair bonding was the birth of the nuclear monogamous family structure for the benefit of the young. One male provided for a specific female and her offspring. Pair bonding was undoubtedly related to a radical change in sexual posture. Unlike other primates whose males approach the females from the rear and mount them from behind, the typical mating procedure of our species is face-to-face. Rear-end copulation without any frontal body contact depersonalizes sex, making the identity of the female a matter of small concern to the male. The hominids, on the contrary, personalized sex by adopting face-to-face mating. In this posture, sexual signaling is closely connected with identification signaling, which is of utmost importance in pair bonding because it links the specific partners more intimately. The sexual act had to become far more attractive if it was to lead to a capacity for forming a strong emotional bond with one specific member of the opposite sex and maintaining that bond during the long period required to raise a family. This new way of life had other important consequences, notably a physiological alteration of the human female, the disappearance of the heat period during which she was sexually receptive in favor of a more permanent, year-round receptivity to the amorous inclinations of the male. With the fade out of the estrous cycle, hormonal control was replaced by mental control. The greater permanency of the female sexual attractiveness throughout the year made a stable union between one male and one female much more stimulating and valuable. Man's own sexuality and other instinctual impulses were gradually brought under cortical control, putting an end to the promiscuousness inherited from his primate ancestors. Increasing sexual dimorphism made the female more dependent upon the male than ever. Hunting enhanced the physical and mental development of the male by making greater demands on him, and he increased in body size, muscular strength, speed, intelligence, imagination, and knowledge. In all of these, the female hardly shared. To that extent, the world became increasingly a man's world, and this remained true until very late. Only some 10 to 12,000 years ago did a new agricultural way of life appear on the planet. It may be relevant to look now at some contemporary primates that traveled part of the evolutionary way for the same ecological reasons before reaching a dead end. While male-female dimorphism is slight among forest-dwelling primates, it increases drastically among the baboons roaming the more dangerous savannas of southern Africa. This increase is not because they took up hunting as their proto-human cousins did so long ago, but because they must defend themselves and their brood. It comes as no surprise, therefore, to learn that selective evolution has operated among these baboons in favor of a great increase in the size and strength of the males, who are physically equipped to defend their females and offspring. What is striking, however, is that evolution has propelled them along a road of development that parallels that of primitive man. Social links are established among the males, links that appear to be connected with some form of political domination, which in turn is connected with a certain sexual predominance, the exclusive possibility for the dominant males to have access to the females in heat. Quite clearly, a selective process is at work in favor of those males who are capable of establishing durable and complex links with other males. This, in turn, enables them to have privileged access to females in heat and to mate with them. These links, if solid and durable, appear to be the foundation of some form of social and political power structure. What is still more striking is that, among such primates, the females appear incapable of forming such links with other females and are unable to group themselves for any purpose whatsoever. Order, stability, and defense of the group depend entirely on the political power structure formed by the associated males. It becomes obvious that Darwinian selection requires the complex ability of the dominant males to establish sexual links with the chosen females and social links with the chosen males. Further observation has disclosed that this type of organization is highly conducive to good upbringing for the young males and contentment for the females. A true system of parenthood apparently operates among apes, with some form of social stratification and definite class structure, completely divorced from any form of property or ownership. This suggests that the distant biological roots of our primitive human institutions can still be found at the subhuman level among certain groups of contemporary primates. Nevertheless, it took the hunting way of life to develop these traits to the full in the human species. Hunting cooperation and specialization are essentially human innovations. While subhuman primates' distribution of work between the sexes is concerned only with defense and rudimentary politics, among the hominids it began to include economics. Thus started at a later stage a distribution of the workload between males and females that has often appeared arbitrary. Certain groups allot to women a type of labor reserved for men in other groups. It has always aimed at separating the sexes during work. It would seem that mixing the sexes functionally introduces a disturbing element that reacts unfavorably on the quality of their economic activity. The most important consideration, however, is that for any work that is considered important or dangerous, males exclude females in order to associate themselves undisturbed and establish strong male-to-male links, unperturbed by female intrusion and sexual preoccupations. It appears probable that the Australopithecine transmitted a genetic code to his descendants according to which males and females are bound to specialize in different tasks, whatever they may be. The male's animal nature, at its deepest level, is programmed to enable him to form associations with other males, to the exclusion of the females. At the very root of mankind's emergence from the animal kingdom as a new species, lies a remarkable increase in sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism was also enhanced by another masculine characteristic that must have become programmed. The human male's typical aggressiveness must have been developed by the need to have two different motivational systems, one for the hunt itself, and the other for eating. Unlike the forest-dwelling primate for whom food collecting is almost simultaneous with eating, the hunting primate sees hunting and eating as two widely separate activities. The hunt itself has to provide its own pleasurable stimulation. Killing the prey must produce its own enjoyment quite apart from its nutritive value. The male of the species became a killer who enjoyed killing for its own sake, and he still does. The division of labor brought on by the new hunting way of life and the ensuing sexual dimorphism was decisive in accelerating human evolution, because it allowed a far more prolonged development of the human child than was, and is the case among other primates. This in turn increased the human infant's capacity for learning while strengthening its affective bonds with parents and family. The lengthening of infancy enabled neoteny to take place and become a permanent feature of the human race's genetic programming. Infantile characteristics are extended into adult life thanks to the retention of embryonic tissues with great potential for change and development. This fetalization enabled the brain to grow steadily through an extended childhood, unlike other primates whose brains at birth have already reached 2/3 of their ultimate size because the sutures of their skulls close too early. Because of this innovation, the interacting symbiotic relationship between mother and child became far more important and long-lasting in humans than in other animals. The precarious state of immaturity in which the human infant is born, and its very long period of dependency, inevitably entailed all the traits that characterize the human animal: the instinct for cooperation, and conjugal and parental devotion and affection. To sum up, the human revolution consisted of the following sub-revolutions: an amazingly rapid tripling of brain capacity between 500,000 years ago and 150,000 years ago, an increase that could not possibly take place in the womb, but had to occur after birth. The lengthening of childhood to enable the enlarging brain capacity to substitute for the vanishing instincts and store information with which to cope with the problems of human adulthood. And, as a social framework, the establishment of family bonds that had to survive the mating season and become permanent to allow full emotional protection for the long development of the human child. The rainforest had abandoned mankind's primate ancestors, but this was a blessing in disguise. The days of leisurely fruit picking were over. Now it was cooperative prey killing all the way. Man was at last free from his cozy arboreal protective prison. From being an earthbound quadruped, he became erect and was able to scan the distant horizon of the primeval grassland. Fleet on his feet, wielding weapons of his own invention, carnivorous, and fired with the extra energy that higher calorie food provides, he was blessed with freedom of choice, but cursed with the threat of constant danger and the need to use his brain to the utmost. He became an innovative predator, feeding on lower forms of animal life. All this, however, affected the male of the species rather than the female. She evolved physiologically with the end of the estrous cycle but remained psychologically behind man in a solipsistic world. While the more cerebral male began to emerge from nature and look at it, to a certain extent from outside, she remained largely within its confines. She was part of nature, and nature was part of her.